For this module, we'll apply everything we have reviewed about MEP Modeler, including its functions and workflows, to develop a basic example of a sanitary installation. I'll walk you through modeling the main branches, working on the connections, and linking everything across the subsequent floors. Feel free to pause and revisit the videos as many times as needed, and don't forget that each lesson includes resources and downloadable materials to support your learning process. With that said, let's get started. Alright, so let's continue with the next part for this series of sections where we will go into the practical exercise, okay, which is going to be the modeling of this sanitary installation, sanitary facility. We will use pretty much all the objects that we already configured in the previous lessons in order to model this basic type of branch, okay. This is just a basic example, but feel free to model this anywhere you want, however you want. I'm also going to share with you some specific objects such as the sanitary manhole, the sink, the toilet, the showers, the equipment. This is something that it's already inside ArchiCAD, but also something specific that I'm going to share with you is the object for the floor drawing. The objects, you can pretty much apply what we already covered in the course of strategic and constructive modeling. You simply create an object, you can set some type of connection and save it as a new object in its own category, or you can always apply what we explained in the previous lesson, save any object as a map part. So take some time to model everything with extra quality, but pretty much this is more of a practice, so you practice this as much as possible. I'm also going to explain to you the basic workflow behind this practice, and pretty much that's it for what we are going to do for this section. So for the next lesson, what I'm going to ask you is to open up whichever version of ArchiCAD you want to use. Feel free to use ArchiCAD 27, 28, but you can also use ArchiCAD 26, 25 or an older version. In my case, since I believe that I'm still a little bit limited with ArchiCAD 27, I'm going to go ahead and use ArchiCAD 26, so we can in the end also do the quantification and also finish up setting the tagging part of the project a little bit faster. So for the next section, open up your template and we will kick off this small exercise. Right, in order to set up our project, make sure that you already have your objects set up. This is exactly the same as we already did in the favorite section. Just make sure to define some basic types of objects so you got everything already ready for use. You can feed it with manual inputs or with the map routine input. For the stories, how about we simply edit the story settings a little bit. I'm going to set this as ground floor, level 1 and maybe level 2. Let's see how many levels we got in the example, which I'm pretty sure that this was 3.23, 3 and 3. Yeah, the separation is 3 meters. Let's use it as it is. And then we got just a small offset over here, but the separation for the stories is going to be set at 3 meters each, okay, and we got 1, 2 and 3 stories for this case. So yeah, the stories we only got 3, and the height to next is going to be set by default. Let's press OK. Now for this case, in my own preference, I rather work in meters, so I'm just going to adjust it for meters with maybe 3 decimal places, okay. Feel free to set it up however you want. I'm going to go ahead with meters, or you can work with millimeters. Feel free to do so. Now for the next step, how about we maybe delete the doodles we got over here. I'm going to delete the reference views we got in the basic template. And how about we go ahead and import this reference just done with the lines, so we can trace in the next section on top of this reference. Okay, so let's go ahead, select the brochure we got over here, drag it and drop it in ArchiCAD. Maybe to make it a little bit better, we could set the brochure in the worksheets. But for this case, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Maybe I'll just leave it at the ground floor. I'm going to explode this into ArchiCAD. Press OK. Let's give it a little bit of time. And now let's activate the suspend group command over here. And let's simply proceed and delete everything that we actually don't need for this example, which is going to be pretty much everything except the references we got in floor plan view. The isometric view might be a little bit heavier than expected, but yeah, with this we pretty much have everything. Okay, so just make sure to extract the part that you actually want to keep. Now we need to also scale this down or scale this up, so we have to make sure that this is set to 3.69 meters from this point to this point. So make sure to select everything and let's activate the resize command over here. Let's left click it, press OK. It's going to be scaled up from this point up until this point over here, and this is going to be scaled down in this case to 3.69. Let's press enter. Okay, and now what we can do is take this reference and set it on the origin. Okay, so it's going to start from this point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to delete maybe all the annotations, all the dimensions, and all the lines that I actually don't need. And now we got pretty much everything ready to start modeling for the next lesson. Okay, so take just a moment, make sure you got your base draft reference, you got everything. And for the next module, we will continue now with the map routing. Alright, so for the map routing, what I usually do is first off, I will position each of one of these objects. I'll take the sanitary PVC 4 inches, position one of these over here. Let's go ahead, take one of the bands, which is going to be PVC 4 inches at 90 degrees. Hopefully we got something over here. This one. Let's position one of these. Let's go ahead and position everything. And finally, but not least, the Y. So what I'm going to do is I'll, just in case, so it works a little bit better, let's pick up the parameters for each of these elements. First for the pipe, next for the elbow, transition, T, and Y. So everything stays saved up, or the parameters of these objects will be saved up on these tools. Okay, and the pipe routing will pretty much also transition some of these parameters when we are drafting the branches. Okay, so let's go ahead, select the pipe work. Well, the diameter is already set, so we don't need to set anything else over here. For the elevation, let's set this to be on the level 0. For the map system, this is going to be sanitary. And for routing options and layers, first off, for the layers, how about we maybe delete everything except sanitary. I'm going to delete this one. And I'm going to create a new layer, which is going to be called objects. This one is going to have an extension, which is map. Let's press OK. For the ArchiCAD layer, it's going to be sanitary. And for the routing options, we can start out with the welded type of connection, but if you want to make it flanged, we can try so, but it's going to have some type of issue because the branch over here starts with 4 inches, and then, especially right over here, this is where we will have a little bit of issues. So just make sure that everything is set. But how about, okay, how about we just go for it? Let's activate the welded, the flange type of connection right over here. It's not going to have insulation. The transition rule is going to place, let's see how it behaves in 2D. It's going to place before the bend. We can leave it as it is. What else we got? Place before bend, connector diameter. Yeah, the connector diameter is going to be a little bit more something like 0.11, so the connectors are a little bit more than 0.10. Okay, so we got this small detail over here. And the bending radius, we can go ahead, set it by element settings right over here, so it will pretty much pick up the parameters we got in the bend. So let's give it a try. Let's go ahead and create the first branch, which we can simply start from this point, continue up until this point, and then connect to the toilet. Okay, so let's go ahead to ArchiCAD, start the routing, left click over here, left click over here, over here. You can also use the Magic Wand tool, but for this particular case I'm not going to use the magic wand tool because it might detect something that I don't want. So the base reference or the base trace is actually so you can click a little bit much easier than instead of typing in manually. For this last part, how about, don't worry about too much the elevation, but simply click the vertical elevation. And you can set it to be something like 0.40, press OK, and simply finish the routing. Okay, so so the most important thing is that right over here, we got a vertical connection that we can adjust later on to our own liking, depending the sanitary position, okay, or the toilet position. So yeah, it's looking quite good. Now what we have to do is a little bit of manual input, because right over here you will notice we got a Y type of feeding, which is 60 degrees, and we got a bunch of connections over here, and we also got an interesting feeding over here, which is also a Y feeding, but it includes a 2-inch reduction. Okay, so the reduction over here is included already with this model. There's something similar happens over here, but we got a basic Y feeding, and then the reduction or the transition is going to be set over here. So how about we maybe continue? Okay, how about we first off solve the feedings, because if we don't solve the feedings, we can't continue with the branches. So let's go back to ArchiCAD for the first feeding. How about we maybe select one of these feedings right over here. We said that this one is going to be 45 degrees. Okay, so let's go ahead, set the feeding a little bit. Let's customize this a little bit more. So the branch angle is going to be 45 degrees. And then we got connections. Since this feeding has a transition of 2 diameters, we need to set this up simply with the modification of these parameters. For this case, let's go ahead to branch, and instead of having a diameter of 4 inches, we can set it to be 2 inches, or in this case, 0.051. For the flange diameter, let's set this to be something like 0.06. And yeah, everything's looking good except the map system, which is going to be sanitary. So yeah, pretty much everything's looking decent. Let's go ahead, press OK. And don't worry about the position just for now. You can simply left click over here, set the feeding, and then set the direction. So you're gonna get the feeding over here. And now, the amazing thing is that you can simply click the editing nodes you got over here, activate the move inline command, and as easy as it is, you can simply adjust the feeding. Okay, so you can pretty much maybe measure the displacement from this point to this point, which is going to be 0.104. Okay, select this node and 0.104, and now if you notice, this will be placed correctly. Okay, so we got the first feeding completely set. Now for the next feeding, what we might do is maybe delete this bend. I'm going to adjust a little bit the connection here, and maybe adjust it over here. And how about we also select one of the base fittings we already got over here. Simply maybe left click over here. It's going to go for this direction and then this direction. Let's see if we actually got the feeding, but yeah, it's not going to be 60 degrees. It's once again going to be at 45 degrees. So let's go ahead, select the feeding, set this to be 45, press OK. And now once again, we can simply move this inline so it matches up the position we require for the reference line, which is going to be 0.037. Let's move this a little bit backwards, 0.037, and now it's looking quite decent. So let's go ahead, connect this one and this one. We can even start a new branch over here, but you can simply connect everything easily. So let's see how it behaves in 3D. Yeah, it's looking quite decent. So yeah, let's go back to the floor plan view, and now what we can do is start a completely new branch right over here, which is going to have, if I remember well, a transition of 2 diameters. Now, before we can start the branch and maybe set this up of the middle of the routing, but my recommendation here is to manually place the transition. Maybe go to ArchiCAD, select your transition, and simply place it manually. So it's going to be as easy as it is. Now let's go ahead, set the diameter to 2 inches. For the routing options, we also have to adjust the connector diameter, which is going to be 0.6, if I remember well. Yeah. Let's go ahead, start the routing, left click over here, and simply finish this connection. I'm going to also maybe connect it vertically just in case. Set this to be maybe 0.20, press OK, and finally finish the routing. So let's see how it behaves in 3D. And yeah, it's looking great. If you notice over here, you got the transition, and now the connection is set up real good. Yeah, it's looking quite nice. We also got a nice connection over here, which I'm pretty sure that we actually don't need because the connection right over here is going to go directly. This is something that we can work on in a little bit. For now, let's just focus on the main feedings and main branches. Now, what we have to do is set up the main branch for the sink. I'm not going to work the detail we got over here, but I'm just going to set this to be completely vertical. Okay, so once again, let's go to ArchiCAD, and we need a branch over here, which is going to do something like this, and going to continue right over here vertically. So let's go ahead, once again, set the branch, start routing, left click, and simply left click over here. Okay, and now let's set this up to be vertically. I'm going to set this up maybe 0.80, not going to worry about too much the vertical displacement, and simply hit the finish routing command. So it's looking good. Let's go back to 3D. And yeah, we got the connection for the sink. So yeah, it's looking quite decent. Now let's go ahead and finish up the final connection we require for this first part, which would be this connection. And once again, we got something going on over here, which would be Y feeding. And then we got an elbow at 45 degrees, a small connection, and then another elbow at 45 degrees. We got this nice detail going on over here. So how about we go back to the floor plan view. Let's see what we can do over here. Yeah, maybe delete this one and careful when deleting items because it's going to select everything that's connected. So let's first up set up the Y connection, which is going to be simply Y at 60 degrees. Let's pick up the parameters for this one. It's going to be at 60 degrees, looking good. Press OK. Left click. It's going to branch off to this direction and then to this direction. So yeah, it's looking great. Now we need to connect this branch, displace it somewhere around 0.232. So let's select this node, activate the moving line, 0.232. Okay, usually I just don't move this directly because I don't really like the position for this node. It's really terrible, but you can also, another easier way to move inline is you can simply select this node over here, which is going to be much easier for this case. Okay, so yeah, something's a little bit off because this one is actually 60 degrees, but we also got an elbow over here. So how about we first off move maybe this element in branch, and then we might set up the elbow instead of maybe 45 degrees. Let's see if we can set this to 30 degrees. Press OK. If nothing works, something that we can also do is maybe set up this a little bit better. Doesn't finish convincing me. I think it's actually 45 degrees. Yeah, it's not going to be 60 degrees. It's actually 45 degrees, the Y feeding. So make sure that in general settings, you set this up to be the branch angle at 45 degrees. This is the one that worked for me. Let's go ahead, position maybe an elbow, which is going to be the bend over here. PVC at 45 degrees, left click, and over here. And yeah, we almost got it. We just need to adjust this a little bit so it matches up this reference line. So let's see if we can move this in line. Maybe the elbow. No, it's not going to allow us. How about we maybe move this individually? Maybe connect this as an individual element. going to move this a little bit over here so this one stays disconnected. Now let's move the elbow. Let's try to move this one until it matches the elbow. And finally the pipe, let's move this around until it connects everything. So as you can see over here, now it's connected really nice over here. And now we can simply go ahead and position manually a pipe on this point and simply adjust this pipe a little bit. Okay, so there we have it. Let's go to 3D. So yeah, it's looking quite amazing in 3D. And now we need to solve one of the last detail, which would be the two elbows we got over here, which are going to give us the connection. So for this case, how about we maybe continue in 3D? It's going to be an elbow at 45 degrees. So let's go ahead, position an elbow in 3D. From favorites, I'm going to select the 45 degree elbow for inches and create a connection over here. Let's go ahead, maybe set up a basic pipe, which is going to be just a small trim over here. Let's move the node. And then let's go ahead, position the final elbow vertically. Now in 2D, we can position this a little bit better because if I remember, we also got a reference line over here, which is going to mark where this elbow needs to be positioned, which is this point over here. So how about we maybe select this one, move this a little bit until it intersects with the line. Okay, so we got the line and we got the elbow. And we can continue and simply adjust this a little bit in 3D. Maybe trim this element a little bit. Connect this to the center point of the other elbow. And carefully start adjusting these elements. Maybe take one of the nodes of the pipe. Just extrude it until it intersects in line. And now we can simply move this around until it snaps on the center of the other pipe. Maybe I'll just move it outside and maybe back inside, which is this node over here. Okay, so I got the reference with snapping guides and left click over here. So yeah, it's looking good. Yeah, okay, and let's see how it behaves in 2D. So yeah, you can pretty much set it up however you want. The most important thing is you got the connection. Just take a few minutes, set this connection up. And now finally we can simply just generate a basic pipe over here, which is going to be set up vertically. So as you can see, the first branch is not going to be perfect, but what you have to do is simply set up everything so later on you can continue working on your connections. We also got a manhole over here, something we're going to comment in the upcoming lessons. But for this case, just make sure to generate your basic branch, your first starting point. And in the next lesson, now we can focus on the small details. Alright, so far we got the base model that we can continue modifying. How about for this lesson, now we focus on positioning each of these objects. We got 1, 2, 3. Okay, this one is separate, so let's count it 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we got this another object over here, 5, and we got a 6 and 7. We got 7 objects in total that we can position. Now in this lesson I'm going to include to you 3 extra objects, which are, yeah, they are in Spanish, we use it in Latin America, but you can use it just for this practice. Just for these examples, so you can simply download these objects from your lesson. They are already in GSM format, so you can pretty much drag them and drop them inside ArchiCAD. Okay, so let's go ahead to the ground floor. First things first, how about we take one of these objects, drag and drop the floor drain, which is going to be this object over here. Let's go ahead, drag and drop the manhole. Okay. This is the manhole right over here. Okay, it's a little bit hard to select, but whatever. And let's go ahead and drag and drop the manhole cover, which is going to be this object over here, and simply drop it right over here. If we go to 3D, these objects, you can visualize them and they look something like this. Specific objects for our sanitary installation. Maybe we can set the manhole to cover to be in this position, and now this becomes one object separated into two. Okay, now for the next object, let's go to equipment. The equipment tool we got over here, linked libraries, ArchiCAD library, mechanical. Let's see what we got in plumbing fixtures, maybe something over here. And yeah, we got the sinks. So for the sink, you can position pretty much any type of sink. Simply go ahead and position whichever you want. I'm going to use maybe the basic one, basin, something like this, and set the model to be rectangular. Okay, let's press OK. Let's go to the floor plan view. I'm just going to set this up outside. Let's position the toilet, which also can be any type of model you wish to position, which is going to be in WC. Okay, let's take the WC26 object, maybe modify this a little bit so it's set to be something like type 3. And you can set this to be wall hung, floor mounted, however you want. The seat type is going to be closed. And the cistern type, let's modify this to maybe be some type, maybe type 6. Okay, you can set this however you want. Let's go ahead, press OK, position the next object. For now, I'm just going to position everything outside, and then I'll make sure that everything fits. And we also got the shower, the handheld shower over here, which I remember well, this is one object and the cabin is another object. So once again, let's go to equipment. Let's search for the bathtub, shower and jacuzzis folder over here. And right over here, you can notice we got the shower cabin. Yeah, the shower kit is going to be in another folder, which is taps, fountains, over here. Okay, so let's go ahead with the shower, position the shower cabin in first place, right over here. Maybe rotate this a little bit. Yeah, it's looking good, but not so good because the object is already integrated. So if I remember well, you can also, for example, go to this object and in the details, you can simply deactivate the accessories. So you can pretty much set this to be nothing and the handle just set it to be basic. And position this object individually because when we get into the tagging part, it's also really important you specify the type of equipment. So this is the reason why I rather set this individually, the cabin as an object and the shower kit as an individual object. Let's press OK and set this object over here. Okay, so we got pretty much everything ready. Now let's go ahead and start positioning the objects and work on the connections. First things first, let's see where we can position this object. Well, in a real workflow, you will always have walls. You will in first place, you will have the object. So this is something to keep in mind. It's not first the objects and then it's not first the installation and then the objects, but on the other way around. You first place the objects in an architectural distribution and then you work on your facility. So make sure that the branch is always defined by the object and not the other way around. Okay, so let's go ahead, maybe for this, just for this practice, position this object, which is actually not in this position, it's going to be the other way around. Now let's be careful because if you notice over here the connection is on the other end and it has to be on a vertical position. So let's try to fix this. Maybe the effluent instead in the back, let's set this to be on the floor, press OK, and right over here you can notice how this object has been positioned. Let's go ahead and set the general displacement to be 0.10 just as a general criteria. Okay, I'm just going to keep it maybe 0.20. You can always work this however you want. The main point over here is that you practice this example. Okay, I'm just going to set everything to match the same axis as we would have an imaginary wall over here. And then I'll simply position everything following this axis. Okay, so let's maybe first off mark this axis with the position for the toilet. Maybe I'll disconnect this pipe, move this around a little bit. So yeah, I got my toilet over here. If I go to 3D, notice how it's going to connect. Now the toilet will also depend, the model will also depend a bunch of criterias. So be mindful on how you always make your connection, okay? But just keep in mind something really important over here. If you notice, this connection has some nodes that you can also click, move this around to specify or work a little bit more comfortable and easier your connection, and the other node will allow you to specify the position for the connection of your equipment. So be mindful about these settings where your connection is, so it's much easier to work on. Let's go ahead with the position for the drain. Now for this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify this a little bit, maybe make the pipe shorter and make the position the drain so it connects also in the same manner. Now if you notice, for some reason we got 3 connections going on over here. For this case, you can simply go to custom settings, connections, and simply deactivate the 2 other connections. You simply deactivate them, you deactivate this one, and simply leave only 1 connection on. So if you notice, you will get a basic connection, something like this. And the drain, you can also select this. You can even rotate this, orient this, so it matches the angle we need the connection. But right over here, you can notice clearly what's going to happen. We will simply connect this point and this point. And yeah, so far so good. Let's go ahead, maybe position the shower we got over here. And the reason I decided to offset the connection a little bit was to just use the imaginary line I commented earlier. So we got the toilet, we got the shower. You can always adjust this however you want. I leave this criteria up to you. Maybe even modify the shower, make it a little bit longer. Let's make it 2 meters over here. Well, not 2 meters, maybe 1.5, maybe 1.20, and move this in line. So we got something like this. So yeah, looking so far so good. We can even move this a little bit over here. If you want to adjust this, maybe let's say 15 centimeters to the left, you can, for example, don't forget you can select the Y feeding and activate the move inline command. Point 15 over here. It's going to adjust most of the branch, but you also need to select this branch over here and make sure that everything stays connected. So how about we maybe select this one, and this one, connect this to the Y feeding. Okay, right over here, make sure that it stays connected. And there we have it. Now the amazing thing, don't forget that you can, for example, select the Y feeding, move in line, and now you can notice how everything will move in branch all together. So this is one of the amazing things about ArchiCAD, is that will allow you to adjust the complete branch really easily. So you can continue adjusting this however you want. I'm just going to set up the shower kit over here. So far so good, except that we need to adjust a little bit the height over here. So yeah, this is something that we need to work on. And there we have it. So we pretty much have the shower. Maybe we can deactivate the extra connection for the shower or the cabin, because yeah, we need to see we got the connections over here. So we got the hot water connection, cold water, and wastewater, which we can simply deactivate because we already positioned the drain independently. Okay, so for the object, I just made sure that it stays at the same height. We got the WC, 0.20 as a general displacement, and 0.20 over here. And so for the branch, I didn't have to adjust pretty much anything. Simply made sure to adjust the drain. And for the drain, you can always mess around with the parameters. You got the different parameters that you can mess around in the all parameters group. Okay, so yeah, for the shower, it's pretty much done. Let's continue now with the final object, which is going to be, well, for this branch, is going to be the sink. And then we can solve the manhole, which is going to be a little bit easier. So for the sink, let's go to 2D, maybe set the elevation to 1 meter, considering the 0.20 displacement we already have. Let's set this in line for our invisible wall over here. And now what I'm going to do is I'll simply adjust this branch And also I will take some time to position one elbow over here. This is going to be a pipe, and this is going to be one elbow here, another one elbow here, one extra elbow here, and a final pipe over here, because we got a specific connection for the sink, which it's already predefined. But if you want to model this out, just make sure that you position everything as a welded element. Don't use some type of flange for this case. And there we go. Well, in my case, I simply decided to model everything in 3D. Just for this part, if you notice, I simply clicked over here. I'll repeat the process. We can, for example, select the 2-inch pipe. Just left click over here and it's going to automatically set the direction for your pipe. Okay? So you can simply start off over here, left click, and then you can simply go ahead and left click over here, set your first bend, then set the next one, which is this one, set the next one and the next one. And simulate any type of special connection you require over here. Okay, so pretty much that's it for this connection, which was relatively easy. And in order to adjust the branch a little bit, I also went to the 2D view, and this is where I also adjusted a little bit the branching. Okay, and for the last part, this is going to be really simple. You simply need to position this manhole at the specific position we got over here, which was from this point we got a displacement of 1.24, and then we got the manhole. So let's take that as a reference. Maybe draw a special guideline over here, which is going to be 1.24. Okay, don't forget that if you want to draw manual guidelines, you simply press Alt plus L or simply activate it over here. Okay, let's see if we can actually divide this pipe into 2 segments with the split tool. Let's see if it's going to allow us. Nope, it's not going. So for this case, I'm just going to move this pipe so it disconnects everything from the system, make it smaller, and adjust it until this point. Okay, now going to move the pipe in line once again. Let's create another copy over here, which is going to be somewhere over here, and let's connect this pipe once again up until this point. So it's looking quite good, so far so good. And now let's select the object, adjust it until it matches the specific height, and also adjust a little bit the exit. So we got the entrance at the very top of the manhole and the exit at the bottom. Feel free to adjust this however you want. The most important thing is that you work in both dimensions, because as you noticed with the sink, some things are easier done in 3D and some things are easier done in 2D. So as always, take some time, work the different objects, work the different connections, and for the next lesson now we can start adjusting everything for the next stories. Alright, so let's go ahead and do the easiest thing over here, which would be to simply copy this from one story to another and work on the vertical connections, because we got this connection over here and then we got the vertical connections. Let's simply go to the stories, right click over here and simply activate the edit elements by stories function. Let's select all types, which we are going to copy from the ground floor, and we will copy this to the level 1 and the level 2 stories. Let's go ahead, press OK. So if you notice over here, we got some issue right over here, because we also get a floating manhole, which is not going to be set on the next story. We should also adjust this a little bit, maybe before we copy it to the next story. So how about we take a moment to work just one time on the next one. So for this case, let's see what we got over here. Yeah, we will get a Y fitting over here with a elbow which is positioned in a really interesting way, if I remember well. So let's go ahead and in ArchiCAD delete the Y fitting, delete the extra fittings we got over here, set this to be just vertically positioned. Now we need a Y fitting which will have some type of branch on this direction. So let's go ahead, take the Y tool over here and activate the PVC Y in 4 inches. Let's see if we can make some type of connection, which is going to be maybe this point with a branch over here and in a vertical connection. So yeah, the most important thing is that you get a feeding that is correctly positioned. Doesn't matter the vertical displacement where, because you can also, for example, select your feeding and simply move this in line until it matches the position you are looking for. So let's see if we can position it in, for starters, over here. Right over here you can notice how the pipe has been adjusted automatically. And now we also need to rotate the bending. Let's see if we can rotate this a little bit over here. So yeah, the bend is going to be 90 degrees, pretty much something like this. And then we need a rotation in the y-axis, something interesting. So for this case, how about we maybe take this bend and turn it to 90 degrees in first place. Well, maybe if we specify to be 90 degrees, it's going to happen something like this. So how about we delete it and maybe just position a completely new bend. PVC 4 inches at 90 degrees, left click and left click. So the horizontal position is pretty much set. Now we need to adjust it for the connection. Now there is an interesting detail over here. If you position an elbow which is completely horizontal, for some reason you won't get the extra node over here which will allow you to rotate this in any direction. So my recommendation here, to make it a little less painful, how about we maybe select once again the PVC 4 inch 90 degree bend, and instead of placing it horizontally, we place it vertically. In this manner we will actually get this node which will allow us to turn it however we want. And right over here you can start adjusting the bend until it matches the desired angle, and carefully match this direction and this connection until it connects smoothly. So I'm just going to take a minute, make sure that it connects smoothly. So yeah, it's not the most perfect connection, but it's just a matter of messing around with the different connections. In a construction project, of course, it's going to be much easier, but in order to simulate this as best as possible, you can simply work around the different positions. Okay, so the simple fact over here is that you can click this node and start adjusting your connection here in one direction, and also make sure to use the move in line command to adjust the position for the Y feeding, and also click on the branch and adjust the node so it adjusts a little bit the length. So for this case we can say we are pretty much done with the connection for the second story. Now what we have to do is carefully, let's once again right click edit elements by stories, copy all the elements from level 1 to level 2. Let's press OK. See how it's going to turn out. Well, not so bad, because we can actually just simply select this element and once again copy this vertically so it matches up the same position. And now simply take the pipe, once again connect this to the next position over here, and make sure and connect smoothly this pipe. Okay, and there we have it. So we got the connection sorted out. Now let's go ahead with the last part, which would be the ventilation tube we got over here. So if you notice, you got a transition, and then you got a 2-inch tube or pipe over here, which goes up until the roof and then has some type of bend over here. So let's take a minute, and using the conventional tools, let's solve the ventilation. And yeah, with this we are pretty much done. So if you notice, it was a bit of a combination with MEP routing, just for the starting point or the starting branch. You can also combine it with multiple types of branches, depends on how you want to use it. And most of the connections were solved with a manual input. So this is my personally favorite part about ArchiCAD 26. You can combine both the routing function with the pipework function. You can combine both the routing input with the manual type of input. Okay, and it's just a matter of sorting out the connections carefully until we get a nice and smooth result. So yeah, with this we can say we are pretty much done with the modeling part for this practical example. And now what we have to do is start adjusting the 2D representation in floor plan view, and also work on our 3D representation, the tagging, the quantification, and the small details. Something that we are going to do in the upcoming lessons, and of course take some time, set up your model, and for the next lesson we can continue. Alright, so let's take some time to sort out the display in the ground floor or the floor plan view. And first I'm going to maybe erase all the guidelines, delete them, and also I'm going to delete the 2D reference line, which was the starting point. Let's delete this one. Now for this pipe, I think it's, well, we can send this to the back, but it's not going to display the connection. So how about we leave it as it is? It's looking decent. For the vertical connection, this is where we have to start working on the representation because we got some issue over here. First off, how about we start verifying how it's working for the floor plan and section view. And this is where we can start using the show on story parameter, set this to all relevant stories, all stories, one story up, one story down, and also make sure to check out which is the home story for this element. Let's say you want to set the display for this Y on the second level, the first level over here. If you switch this from ground floor to level 1, be really mindful about this parameter. What's going to happen is going to add 3 meters over here. If you want to display it on another story, you have to set this to be 0 and simply set the home story for the element. Or once again, from level 1 to ground floor, it's going to set this to -3 and set this to 0. Or even so, you can set this value. Just be real mindful about the position and the display. Let's press OK. So let's go ahead and simply, I'm just going to verify the first set of elements over here. And for this pipe, yeah, this is where things will get interesting, because we also, if I remember well, this Y fitting has an issue, and right over here. If you notice, the Y fitting is set on level 1, but the floor plan display or the home story is set for the ground floor. So what we have to do is simply copy the displacement, set this to be level 1, and Ctrl V over here, so it stays on the same position. Let's go ahead, press OK. So yeah, it stays in line. And now for the ground floor, it's not going to display the fitting. Let's do the same for the next one, because if I remember well, we also got some problem over here. So yeah, this is the reason why I don't like to copy elements in 3D, is because the home story is going to be set to the ground floor or the original story you had before. But yeah, you can always solve this manually. Let's go to the ground floor. So yeah, we got this element because it's set for the level 1 current story, which still displays on the ground floor for some reason. Let's go ahead and maybe in floor plan and section force this to stay on the home story only. Let's see if it disappears from ground floor. And yeah, there we have it. So everything is set correctly now. And we can now visualize the vertical pipe we got over here and the connections we got over here for the ground floor. Okay, so it's pretty much set for the ground floor. Well, maybe we can even select these objects and specify them to have some type of transparent visualization. Let's go to Basin settings, maybe in all parameters or representation and surface. Set the fill type, fill background pen, actually set this to be transparent. The background can be set to be background, the fill type to background, but the background pen it will be transparent. And if it's set to transparent, now you can visualize what's going to happen over here. The same will apply for the WC. Let's go ahead and set the representation to be transparent. Press OK. and the same will apply for the shower cabin. So yeah, the ground floor is pretty much set. Now what we have to do is, with the same techniques, with the same functions, just make sure that this visualizes correctly, okay? And of course, the last part will require some work on. Okay, so let's take a moment and fix the small details we got over here. And there we have it. So pretty much it will display now the ventilation shaft or the ventilation tube, the transition, and before the transition we got the feeding and the pipe. So yeah, it's pretty much just a matter of right click, set the display order, make sure that the show on story parameter is set to home story, or in some cases you can switch this to one story up or down, or set this to all stories, depends the case. And also make sure that you visualize in which position or on which story your elements are set. So as always, take some time, make sure you work each of the different stories you got for the project, but especially for this specific part of the connections, okay? And having solved the 2D representation for the floor plan display, now we can continue setting up the isometric view. Alright, and once the hard part is done, which was the modeling and the solution of the different feedings, let's focus now on how we are going to create this isometric type of projection, which, trust me, it's much easier than it looks. Well, the tagging part not so much, but the projection is quite easy. So for this case, the first thing we would have to do is go to the generic axonometry over here, simply activate this. And just with a visual reference, you can set this, you can orbitate this and position this on a preliminary isometric position, if we can call it like that. And now what we have to do is make sure that this is definitely set on the projection. So let's select the generic axonometry, and you can simply hit the settings button over here, or right click this and go to the 3D projection settings. So this is where it's much easier, because in first place you can solve this in two different ways. Either way, you can set the angles to 30, 150 and 90 degrees with the axis length on 1, 1 and 1. So it's going to give you this nice and completely precise type of projection. And the second way would be to simply set this on isometric axonometry and start messing around with this icon. You can left click and start dragging this camera icon until you get a snap which matches the projection you are looking for. And if you notice, it's going to snap and give you the exact same angles and the exact same lengths we have just positioned. So the first thing you need to do is set the correct projection. And once you're done, you can simply go ahead, right click on any empty space without having anything selected. Let's go over here to the new 3D document from 3D option over here. Let's name this something as isometric number 1, isometric sanitary, or sanitary isometric, however you want to call it. And let's go ahead and simply hit the create button. So what's going to happen is that it's going to take the 3D view and it's going to vectorize it and convert this into a 2D projection, okay, which we can later on start tagging and later on start adjusting. But before we get into that part, we still need to adjust a little bit the lines. If you notice, everything is a little bit more transparent. So yeah, we need to adjust the visualization. And it's going to be also quite easy. You need to select in the 3D documents, your document, and once again, just simply go over here to the settings, okay? Or either way, you can right click on an empty space and activate the 3D document settings option over here. So it's going to give you this window, this floating window, which you can start adjusting. You got also the general data right over here. You got the 3D projection settings. Once again, you can, for example, hit the filter elements, set which elements you want to display, or the 3D projection, and once again adjust this. For this case, what we want to do is in model appearance, we want to adjust a little bit of the different parameters. And this is something that we already covered in the second course, the basic BIM framework. First place, since we don't have any element which has been cut, this section is obsolete. It doesn't really matter for this specific case. So let's straight up jump into the uncut elements, and this is where we can set the uncut field to be something as uniform pen. The field is going to be completely background fill or window background, so it sets the color to white. And the uncut pens, well, the contours will be set something not so black, okay, but we can set this to maybe some type of gray, 0.25 dark gray sounds good. You can also activate, for example, the transparency if you want to do so. For this case, let's deactivate this and let's hit OK button so we can see the result. So yeah, we get some type of projection, which is looking quite decent for now. But we still need to visualize what's going to happen behind this object. So in first place, how about we activate maybe the transparency? Let's hit OK. So yeah, the transparency is going to visualize everything that's behind this type of glass. But still, we need to visualize the hidden lines. And it's quite easy to activate also because right over here you got the hidden edges. Simply activate this, and if, for example, for the uncut line pen you got some type of dark gray color for the hidden edges, you can go ahead and make it some type of light gray for this case. So let's activate the hidden edges, let's press OK, and right over here you can see how you get this nice and smooth type of representation, which will also visualize what's going to happen behind the different objects. Finally, you can go ahead, set maybe the visualization scale or the print scale to something a little bit bigger, such as 1 to 50 or even 1 to 20. I'll leave this decision up to you. For this practical case, I'm going to set it to 1 to 50. If I notice that the tags are still quite big, I can once again adjust the scale. So yeah, it's pretty much looking good, and we can say that yeah, we are pretty much done with the first part for the isometric projection. So as always, take some time, make sure that you solve in first place the projection and in second place the visualization. Okay, you get the nice type of visualization, the nice type of 2D representation. And once you got everything ready, we can continue with more details in the next lesson. Alright, so before we get into the tagging part, because if you notice over here, we got different tags in the floor plan view, and we also got them in the isometric projection. But before we get into this, the first thing we need to do is adjust all the different IDs we got for our elements, okay? And for this case, it's going to be much easier. We simply go to the 3D view. And what we can do is we can select the pipe tool, press Ctrl A, select all the pipes, and simply go ahead, right click it, and show selection. So what's going to happen is that it's pretty much going to filter out all the different pipes we got in the project. And now what we have to do is start adjusting the IDs, set the ID for all the pipes that are 4 inches, and we can go ahead and select the pipes that are 2 inches and then adjust the ID. Now it's something unfortunate that yeah, I have tried and I didn't notice how you can solve this, but you could try to maybe go ahead and find select button over here. Yeah, you could, for example, try to maybe activate the pipe tool, but yeah, you can go ahead, activate the pipe, but I'm pretty sure that it's not going to give you some type of parameters, so you can select maybe the library part, or maybe select all the pipes that have some specific diameter. Yeah, it's going to allow you to select the pipes, but on general criteria. But let's say if you get into criteria such as, for example, the diameter right over here, and maybe the diameter, how about we select all the pipes that have this type of diameter? Well, this is where we face the issue, because it's not going to give us a parameter for this pipe object. And neither way it's going to give us the parameter for the object. Because if you remember well, when we made the example with the quantification, we had a third option, which was the library parts. And this made it possible so we could extract the different parameters from the objects. But in the find and select function, well, this unfortunately is not present for a reason. So yeah, in this case, what the best thing we can do is select all the pipes, filter all the pipes, and then simply go ahead and start selecting manually those pipes that are 2 inches in diameter and adjust the ID manually. So for this case, I'm going to do that. How about we select all the pipes that are 2 inches. And once you have selected them, you got 2 different options. The first one would be to go to the settings, classifications and properties, and right over here you can set the ID. Let's set this to be something like pipe 2 inches, P 2 inches, okay. Let's press OK. And now what we can do is right click, hide the selection, and simply select the rest of the pipes and do the same. Let's go ahead, set this to P 4 inches, and let's hit the OK button. So once you got everything ready, let's test this out. Let's see if we can once again show all. Okay, so we undo the filter, maybe go to the ground floor, and let's test just a basic tag so we can notice if it's going to detect it. Let's left click over here. So yeah, you get the nice representation, and for the 2 inches you will get the nice ID over here. So yeah, it's pretty much a matter of selecting the different objects and assigning the correct ID. So let's go ahead and do the same process, but now for the bands, I'm going to Ctrl A and right click, show the selection. And what we can do is go ahead, start selecting the different bands and start adjusting the different IDs. Alright, and once you made sure that all the elbows are set, don't forget that you can select them, and right over here you also got the ideal properties, which is also a little bit faster to ID each of the elements. So let's go ahead, show everything once again, and let's continue with the transitions, with the T's, with the W's. You can pretty much assign any type of ID you want. Okay, so I'm going to take a few minutes and now finish up setting all the IDs for my elements. And also don't forget that once you are done with the different map components, you also need to ID the different objects. You can always check out the brochure. So this one is going to be some type of sink, that's the toilet, the floor drain, which has a model over here, and the model for the handheld shower, the model for the cover, the manhole, etc. And yeah, pretty much now we can say that I'm done. Well, in my case, as always, takes some time. We also got some small issues that we can always detect once we start tagging the different elements. If you want to detect if something's missing, a quick way would simply be to maybe create a schedule that lists all the elements you got in your model, or by layer, and you can list the ID and then start checking out if something right over here is missing. So if you get some general elements that maybe say flow EQ6, something like that, it means that it hasn't been specified. But right over here you can notice how all the different objects now have been specified. Maybe even merge the items, so we can simplify this a little bit. And yeah, for some reason I still got these objects. Let's see if we can select them in 3D. Don't forget that you can select the item or the ID over here. Click the select in 3D button over here. And of course, yeah, it was the shower cabin. So if you notice, it's quite easy to detect which IDs are still missing, and with a basic schedule you can also solve this small issue. So as always, take some time, make sure that you solve the different IDs you got in your project, and for the next lesson now we can get into the fun part, which would be the tagging and the quantification. Alright, so this is where things will get interesting and quite simple and easy to set up. Okay, so first things first, let's go to the isometric sanitary that we had earlier. And what we have to do in first place is make sure that we set up the label. We configure this as best as possible. So when you click on one element, you will simply get automatically the ID you require. Now, if you get something else, most likely the label tool is already set up in the ArchiCAD template. But if you, for some reason, get something else, simply go to the settings we got for the label. Make sure you activate the text and auto text type of label. You set it to be the most basic type of label for this particular case. No pointer and no extra settings. Okay. Don't forget that you can always double click the label and activate the insert auto text function over here to set which data you want to extract from each particular element. So for this case, what we are doing is extracting the element ID we set up earlier in the label tool. So this is the first thing. Just make sure that when you click on each element, it will automatically give you the ID it has been set up. So this is where things will get really interesting. Now you can simply pick up the parameters for your label. Let's delete maybe this label over here. And let's simply go ahead, press Ctrl A to select all the different objects in the isometric projection. And let's simply go to Document, Annotation, and label the selected elements. Okay, so pretty much automatically you will get all the different labels positioned. You can mess around with the printing scale you got over here, whether it's going to be 1 to 50, 1 to 20, and start adjusting everything that's not correctly positioned. So right over here, you can, for example, select the label, move it around. You can position each of the different tags in the position you desire. So yeah, this is pretty much what I'm going to do. I'll take a minute and maybe make some small adjustments, such as, for example, right over here, we can adjust this and maybe adjust this a little bit better. So yeah, adjusting the labels is going to be a little bit time consuming, but if you want to fine tune your isometric documentation, it's going to be totally worth it. So right over here, you can notice how everything's nicely been labeled. Now, before we close the isometric projection, a really good idea would be to specify the flow or the direction for the flow for the Sanidor installation. And you can do it in two different ways. We said that we can always, for example, switch the type of line for each pipes to something maybe as an arrow. Press OK. And yeah, well, for this case, we actually got some issue because if you notice in the isometric projection, even if we set the visualization to arrow, it's not going to give us the projection. So let's keep it maybe as dashed for now. Let's go to plan B, which would be to take the polyline tool, activate as a line type, set this to be maybe some type of arrow, and carefully start drawing the flow manually. So we can left click, left click, left click, and with this start drawing the direction for the flow. So yeah, pretty much it's just a matter of drawing on top of the projection a polyline. So if we activate the true line weight, you can notice how we all now get this arrow indicating the direction for the flow. And now, having done this, we can say that we are pretty much done with the isometric projection, the tagging part, and the fine-tuning of these small nice details. Okay? So take some time, make sure to solve the isometric projection. For the ground floor, it's going to be exactly the same process. We can go ahead, select everything, document, annotation, and label the elements. And then take a moment to adjust the different tags so they are separated a little bit and fit a little bit better, which is a little bit more time consuming. And for the direction, you got two choices. You can integrate or solve this integrated within the pipe itself, where you can go to visualization and set the arrow. Okay, press OK. Yeah, for the arrow, well, we got some issue because sometimes it's going to reverse the direction of the arrow. So for this case, what we had to do is maybe invert the pipe, which is going to be, from my personal perspective, I think this is a little bit more troublesome. So how about we do the same, exactly the same process what we did with the isometric projection, but for this case for the ground floor display. So yeah, it's just a matter of fine-tuning the details. If you want to adjust this to be a little bit better, you can, for example, even select all the pipes and maybe even deactivate the center line, because if we specify the flow, well, the center line is not so useful for this particular case, but once again, it will depend on how you want to use these tools. Okay, so feel free to use whichever technique you want to go ahead and use it. I'm going to deactivate the center line for all the different connections and elements. Press OK. Let's go back to the ground floor once again. And now it's looking much better. So if you notice, we got the flow, we got each of the different tags. And now we can say that we are pretty much done with the ground floor and with the isometric projection. So as always, take some time, make sure that you solve this as best as possible or however you want to apply the tools. And for the next lesson, we are going to continue with the last part. Just a little bit of a recapitulation of something already commented, but applied for this example. So let's go ahead and comment a little bit on how you can solve the quantification. Now, if you remember, we set up the ID for each of the elements. So it's going to be really easy if you want to solve it in this way. You can simply extract the ID and the quantity, and that's it. Okay, that's the first way. Now, the second one would be maybe extract the ID. You can get the quantity. You can, for example, add the length of each of the pipes, a parameter for the length, another parameter maybe for the angles, another parameter for the elbow angles, another parameter maybe for the Y branches and angles. But if it's more practical, if I'm completely honest with you, if you set this to be by ID and the quantity. So let's go ahead. What I'm going to do is maybe I'll delete all the different schedules I got over here. Start from scratch, right click it, new schedule. Okay, and let's go ahead and set this to maybe be something else, MEP01, sanitary quantification, something like this. Let's press OK. Now, since we don't even have anything else modeled for the example, what we can do is set this to be pretty much all types. You can always filter this by layer. You can filter this by different types of parameters, such as the geometry. If you want to filter it by layer, it's definitely going to be much more practical by layer or the layer combination. Let's set this to be all types since I don't have anything else. And let's extract, for example, the element ID. Double click it, and also the quantity. Let's double click it. Let's press OK. Let's open up the schedule and let's merge the different items. Maybe adjust a little bit the schedule, and right over here we can say that pretty much we are done. But if you don't want to make it so boring, you can go ahead, activate scheme settings, and start including different or specific parameters for each of the objects. Don't forget that what you can do is right over here, click the extra parameters button over here, library part parameters, search for the object you are working with. For this case, how about we select all the pipes we got in the pipe work group, which are going to be, if I remember well, in the segment folder over here. Let's select the pipe straight object. And how about we even get the parameter for the length. So we get the pipe length if you want to work with different lengths. Let's add this parameter. Let's press OK. And maybe even for the elbows, we can go ahead and maybe add the angle, library part parameters. Set this to be maybe MEP library, and let's go to pipe work. Fittings, bend fittings, and we got the pipe bend over here. Let's go ahead, filter out alphabetically speaking, okay? in alphabetical order and take up the bend angle parameter, which is this one over here. Let's add this up, press OK, and let's see how it's going to behave in the schedule. Let's go ahead, press OK. So yeah, it's not going to be really practical if you already specify the different parameters for your IDs, because now what's going to happen is that it's going to give you a more segmented type of schedule, where you will get pipe 2 inches, you got 13 different pipes at 0.07 length, and you got 20 pipes at, yeah, this is not adding up, something's wrong over here. Let's see if we can separate the elements and let's see how the different lengths are going to display. So yeah, if you notice over here, now we get one of the groups which is going to be at 0.07 length, which has 65 centimeters in length, 79, 88, 3 meters, 0.06, and so on. So yeah, if you notice, you'll get a more separated and more lengthy type of schedule. If you want to work this in this way, go ahead, feel free to do so, but you will have to adjust a little bit the IDs, okay? For this case, to keep it as practical as possible, my best solution would be to work just with the element ID. We can remove the special parameters, press OK, once again merge the different items and get a general idea of how many fittings we got. And now we can simply take a minute and set up a little bit the format for the schedule. And yeah, pretty much we're done with the quick quantification. Yeah, we should definitely maybe quantify the whole length for the pipes, so we get a general idea of how many linear meters we need for the pipes. So that's a good idea. But for the fittings, if you notice, it's going to be as simple as setting up the ID for each of the fittings, and then you get a general idea of how many of each fittings you require for this sanitary installation. So pretty much we can say that now we are done with the practical example. As always, practice this as many times as you need. Practice the 3D modeling part, practice the isometric projection, you can practice the quantification, and all the different techniques and methodologies that we covered for this section. And congratulations, with this we have wrapped up another ArchiCAD course. There are even more solutions we can employ for the constructive workflow, but for now this is the main methodology and functions you can start implementing to elevate your projects to the next level. And now what's next? My suggestion is to take some time after completing this course to practice as much as possible and integrate the knowledge into your own workflow with these new methodologies and solutions. And while we can continue learning more functions, from an educational standpoint, I recommend implementing what you have learned first before diving into more possibilities offered by ArchiCAD. And similarly, I'm constantly working to simplify and document all types of ArchiCAD knowledge through this series of training programs. If you're looking to further expand your ArchiCAD skills, you can enroll in the course titled Special Operations with ArchiCAD, where I will cover more advanced functions such as the implementation of hot-linked modules, the use of the renovation and design option tools, the incorporation of artificial intelligence, the use of teamwork, IFC interoperability, photogrammetry, and other functions that will further enhance your expertise with ArchiCAD. So I invite you to take a brief moment to review the syllabus for the next course. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm here to help you. I hope you have enjoyed this training program and, most importantly, that you have gained new skills. Additionally, I'd appreciate it if you could take a moment to evaluate this course so that I can continue improving the quality of present and future training programs. With that said, we'll stay connected through the various communication channels within this platform, and without further ado, I wish you the best of successes in your upcoming projects, and I will see you in the next time.